The reason that finances are an emotional thing for people is because they feel stuck or they don't feel in control of the situation. But in all actuality, if you were proactive and you looked ahead and you made a game plan for how you were going to make X amount of dollars, you would realize it's the most empowering feeling in the world. And all you got to do is go execute on that plan. Welcome back to another episode of the Elite Business Advice Podcast. My name's Chris Moore, the founder of Elite Business Advisors, your host here for the podcast. Finances are an emotional thing. They bring out the worst in people. It's the number one area that we see both personally and in business. People would actually rather stick their head in the sand. If you've ever heard of the proverbial ostrich thing, right? They'd rather stick their head in the sand because it's actually more comfortable than just confronting the reality. That's not always the case. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes we get started working with painting contractors and they don't know their numbers. We get everything kind of organized. We get it put together and it's like, oh, okay, actually better than we thought, or better than they would have thought, right? So it's not always the case. But typically, whether it's your personal lives, whether it's in business, I've heard it time and time again from people, quote, I would rather not know than know the reality of it. And so let me say that I can understand that. I understand that it's an emotional thing. I understand that it makes us make dumb decisions or to do irrational things because emotionally we would rather just not know than to know maybe a tough situation. And again, not always the case. But let's not forget that you can improve what doesn't get measured, and that when you actually understand where you are and you can create a plan, you're actually in control of it. And to me, that's a very liberating thing. I think it's something we forget about. We think about uncovering maybe the unknown of how are we doing financially, again, personally or business. I'm going to talk business in this episode mostly here today. But as we uncover that, that's just step one. And I said to somebody last week, don't forget that the reason you're uncovering and doing all of these things is because that's step one of the plan to put a plan together and be in control of it moving forward. So you never feel stuck again because you're actually in control. So I hope breaking down the 3 pitfalls of the finances in business helps. Thank you guys as always for plugging in. This is the Elite Business Advice Podcast. So we titled this episode 3 Financial Pitfalls in Your Painting Business. And so here's the 3 pitfalls that I have for you. I'm gonna actually just go through one by one. I'm gonna break down on each one. So I'm not just gonna give you the list here. I should have started this maybe a little differently. The first pitfall is being in the dark about your numbers. What we should have is what I call awareness. Kind of break this down into 3 words here by the end of it as far as what we should be doing, okay? So the first pitfall is being in the dark about your numbers, and what we should have in our lives in this area is awareness. And what do I mean by awareness? Well, of course, I have to talk about job costing because why would I do an episode without talking about job costing? It doesn't happen here. I'll find a way to weave job costing into a recruiting conversation if I have to because I believe in it that deeply. But it's an easy place to start. If you've never job costed a project, and this is the first time you're coming across our podcast, hopefully this is my convincing to just help you to do it. Okay. We have a free job costing sheet that we will share with anyone. It will forever be a free giveaway for us. We have a very basic, simplified one of it. We have a whole another level of it built out for our clients, but we believe in job costing so much that I will just give this simplified resource away for you guys. Shoot me an email, chris@elitebusinessadvisors.com. I'm happy to share that. Or if you know somebody that needs a copy of it, please let me know. But we want to job cost out our projects. We want to understand how are we doing in our business, right? We group our job costing together by month that jobs were produced. But I want you to understand on each job, how much money did you make on it? What was that gross profit? What was our labor margin? What was our material margin, right? What was the percentage in relation to the overall cost of the job for each of those categories? There's some industry benchmarks that we want to know. Are we doing well? Are we not doing well? Okay. So the easiest place to get some awareness about your finances of your business is to job cost out your projects. From there, I want you to go maybe a little bit of a step further. Okay, here's the second thing. I kind of broke this one down into five areas of awareness in the numbers of your business. Most of them are financial related. I had to throw a couple other ones in here. The second thing is, what was our net profit that month based on what we produced, right? So if we lump all the jobs together that we produced here in the month of November, and then at the end of it, we take out what was our overhead, right? Insurance, marketing, fuel, office rent, all the things you spend money on. You take out what you paid yourself as the owner. You take out any other salaries or overhead positions. How much money did the company make? Okay. Those two numbers really kind of start to give you everything you need to know about the finances of your business. When you can see your job costing, you can see your margins, you can see how much are we producing every month, and then we can see what's the net profit based on that production. That starts to give you some pretty powerful metrics on how you're doing, right? Maybe it's good and we want to make it better. Maybe it's not great and we need to make it better. Now we have levers we can pull. The third number we need to understand is, what is our North Star metric? We did a whole episode on this earlier this season. I don't remember what episode, probably somewhere in the 20s to 30s, somewhere in that ballpark. Probably the 20 to 30s in season 5 here. On the EBA podcast. And so go back and listen to it. We did a whole episode on it, but basically what a North Star metric is, how much work do we need to produce every single week to ensure that we make a profit every month? Okay, so that's a really powerful thing to know. So when you understand that, then you can measure against it. If our goal is we need to produce $15,000 every single week to ensure that our business is profitable in terms of, 10 to 15% net profit at the end of the month, then my next goal is making sure that we produce 15,000 every week, right? Is it scheduled? Yes, great. Now I got to execute on the schedule. Is it not scheduled? Great. Do I need to make sure that I'm scheduling 15K a week? Or if not, I need to make sure I'm selling 15K a week, right? Like, you can kind of backfill your sales plan there. The fourth type of number you should know, marketing ROI. If you're spending any sort of money on marketing, you should understand what your ROI is. Okay? I'm going to be very truthful with you guys. My team caught me off guard the other day. I'm going to own this one. We were on our team call. We do it twice a month, every other week, Monday mornings. And that's enough for us as a whole team. I do one-on-ones with each of our advisors every single week. But the conversation came up of what was our ROI on PCA? And because we're a big sponsor of PCA, industry partner, we love to show up, support at these events. I've had a blast this fall. We were just in Nashville a couple weeks ago for Women in Paint. And this is where the conversation came up. And I looked at them and I said, I actually don't know the answer to that. Because for me, we don't spend really money on marketing, right? We sponsor and do a lot of stuff with PCA. We show up and support at these events. We'll do a couple little tiny things here and there, but we're not running Facebook ads. We're not running Google ads. We're not going crazy and we're just not doing it yet. We haven't had to. We've grown very healthily, very steadily as we have over the last 5 years. And we just haven't needed to go down the Facebook ad route, the Google ad route. We haven't had to, right? We might at some point. We just haven't had to yet. Okay. And so I quickly realized I'm being a hypocrite, because I should still know what is the ROI on all the dollars that we spend with PCA and what's the, the amount of client revenue we get. I should know that. I don't. So I'm just being transparent with you guys, because I, like many business owners, kind of got caught in the trap of I'm not really advertising. I don't need to know this number, but at the end of the day, we're spending money on something and I'm not tracking it. And I got gapped, as my good friend Nick Slavic would say. Somebody showed me a gap in my belief and my understanding, and apparently I feel vulnerable enough to just throw it out in front of all of you guys. So please just don't use that against me, and appreciate the vulnerability there. So the last number that you should know in your business, and again, this isn't a financial metric necessarily, but as we're just talking about awareness, you're talking about KPIs, something I would know is what is your closing rate? Right? It concerns me a little bit to have an analysis meeting with somebody, and I'm like, hey, what is your closing rate? And they have no idea. They have no clue. They're I think it's 40%. And maybe they are using a CRM and we can look into it and it's 20%, right? Or maybe it's 80%. They don't know it, right? You should understand that out of all the bids you go do, how many of them are you are you selling? How many of them are you closing? Whatever you want to call it. Okay. So number one, pitfall. Being in the dark about your numbers. What should we do? We should have awareness. Second pitfall is not looking ahead to the future. You're too stuck in the yesterday, if you're even stuck there, that we're not looking ahead to the future. And so what we should be doing is forecasting. We should have awareness. We should be forecasting. Okay, there's your first two right there. And what do I mean by forecasting? We should be proactive in looking ahead to the future. Finances is not a game that you want to be reactive to. Unfortunately, too many people are reactive here, and they just look at their profit and loss at the end of the year with no time to do anything about it, and they go, that's how we did. That should never be the case, right? If you're job costing and you're doing what I just talked about, you at least know what we're doing in the moment. And then what I want you to start doing is planning. I'm just to throw a lot of ing words here at you, right? This is what we did. Okay, not great. At least then you know what you're doing currently, current month or most recent month. Still kind of reactive, but at least you're in the know throughout. But what I want you to do is I want you to be planning. Okay, and the reason that finances are an emotional thing for people is because they feel stuck or they don't feel in control of the situation. But in all actuality, if you were proactive and you looked ahead and you made a game plan for how you were going to make X amount of dollars, you would realize it's the most empowering feeling in the world. And all you got to do is go execute on that plan. But unfortunately, what happens a lot of times is we're just not proactive. We're too reactive. At best, we're living in the moment or in the yesterday, not, maybe not even last week or last month, but we're still living yesterday. We need to be looking ahead. One of my favorite things to do every single month is at the end of the month, literally usually on the last day of the month, the first day of the month, this month it was like November 3rd because the first and second fell on a weekend and I felt like I was so behind, is I sit down and I look at how was our month. Because of the way our business flows, I can't look at things weekly. I can't job cost things out, right? Everything for us happens within a calendar month, right? Either it's, money coming in from our clients that, have signed up with us for our one-on-one coaching, expenses going out, whether it's our software subscriptions, whether it's some of our sponsorships, like with PCA, whether it's the, payout of our team, like whatever it is, everything happens during the month and there's no rhyme or reason. I can't really look at the 10th of the month or the 15th of the month and see how we're doing. And it drives me freaking nuts because I'm so used to doing that previously, having a painting company. And so the first of the month, I sit down and I look through because it's as real time as I can get it. Everything's pretty much closed in and out at that point. And I can go through and I can look and see how we did. What was our monthly net profit for the month? What was, how did did our cash flow grow, right? Did our cushion grow at all? Like, how did we do? And then guess what I do? I look ahead to what's the upcoming month look like, right? Because we're always onboarding new clients and things are changing, right? And clients are, adjusting packages and stuff. And so like I always sit down and go, okay, great. This is how we did last month. Great. Sometimes it wasn't great in the early years, but what I was able to do was say, okay, but what's this month going to look like? And I can live with last month was but if this month looks great and we're turning a profit, then hallelujah, we're on the right track, right? And so I always look ahead. What's November going to look like, right? If everything holds true, even if we don't onboard another single client during this month, what do we expect? Where are we projecting? What expenses do we have coming up? Like, always looking because I want to be proactive in our business. It's how we can be good stewards of our money. It's how we get to where we want to go. Okay? And again, not perfect at it. Clearly, I still have gaps as we just uncovered. In this part, when you have the awareness, you can use that data to make decisions for planning. A couple things that are obvious here. I mentioned earlier, gross profit, labor margins, material margins. That's really huge to have to be able to plan for what do you expect next month to look like. If you know your labor is at 40%, your materials are at 15%, your GP is 55. If your goal is $100,000 in production, you know that if those numbers are historical averages from the last few months, you feel pretty good planning that if we do 100, our gross profit will be 55, maybe plan for 53 as a buffer. right? So when we have data, we can make decisions. When you understand what is your monthly overhead every month, right? All the expenses in your business, it's going to fluctuate month to month. I get it, right? Gas prices go up and down. Maybe you drive more, you drive less, you eat out more. It's going to fluctuate, but you get a pretty good understanding that like, hey, our overhead is between $18,000 and $22,000 a month, right? Or, maybe again, you're a smaller company, that's fine. It's between $3,000 and $5,000. Like, when you have the data, because we are financially aware, now you can use that to make decisions to plan ahead and forecast. Because guess what? You can't plan, you can't forecast if you don't know. Okay. So when I said in the intro that you are in control, this is what I meant. When you understand your numbers, it allows you to become in control of your financial path moving forward. And to me, that's exciting. You may not love step 1, but step 2 is just a great feeling, right? Most people started business because they wanted to be in control. They wanted to have all the say, right? And I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but point 3 is pretty short. I love entrepreneurship for one reason, because I will bet on myself any day over betting on getting a paycheck from somebody else. And if you're listening to this, I'm guessing that's a big reason why you started your business, right? I've joked that I'm unemployable at this point in my life because I haven't had a normal, quote, job since I worked at Red Robin in college and was 19, 20, might have still been there when I was 21 before I quit, right? That was like the last time I had a boss. Even with student painters, I had a boss, but Charlie and I were great friends. He was a mentor to me. Right? Yeah, I reported to him, but I didn't feel like I was a boss. I didn't also have to clock in and out, right? So I'm guessing that you're an entrepreneur because you wanted some control. And I always felt like I would bet on myself any day because I'd rather know that I was in control and that if something didn't happen, it was because I didn't do it, I didn't execute, I could take responsibility for it. I don't want to blame people. I see a lot of entrepreneurs blaming people. All right, we're moving on. If that hit home, I apologize. I wasn't trying to throw that in there, but I guess if the shoe fits, put that sucker on. All right, third pitfall. The third financial pitfall in your painting company that we see a lot is not understanding that just maybe where you're at right now doesn't work. I know it's like a weird statement, but here's what I mean. What we should be doing is we should be benchmarking, right? So if we think about it, awareness, forecasting, benchmarking, you do those 3 things, you're doing well financially. You're setting yourself up to do well financially. All right, what do I mean by maybe where you're at just doesn't work? I want to talk about business models for a second, because I think this is something that isn't talked enough about. I want to do a deeper dive on this, and I probably will at some point in the coming episodes as we get into planning for 2026. But maybe the model you're in or that you currently have just doesn't work for where you are. And that's okay, but we need to understand what's normal, what's not, and how the industry should work. Okay, and what I mean by that, I'm gonna clarify that caveat before you're already yelling at me in your car driving to your next bid listening to this. What I mean by that is maybe you currently have a full-time project manager, a full-time estimator. I say full-time as in they're not painting in the field, and your revenue is only $700K, and you're trying to still pay yourself, a normal salary. Okay, that's not typically going to work. Now, maybe you didn't know any better. That's what we see a lot of times, right? Because people aren't benchmarking. They don't understand business models in the painting industry. And that's okay. It's called grace. Forgive yourself, but go fire your PM or fire your estimator and let's figure out how to make it work. Okay? So I say that benchmarking is important because we need to understand what are the industry benchmarks for how successful businesses run. Yeah, there's going to be exceptions. There's going to be creative ways to do things. I will forever say that. We have some clients that have taken some unconventional approaches to grow their business, but guess what? It's worked. And we did it very creatively and very calculated, and we knew what we were doing, or they sacrificed income to do it. We had a client here in St. Louis. I won't say his name, although I think he would be totally open to it, but I'm not going to say his name. He hired a project manager at $500,000 in revenue, which is typically a $800,000 to $1 million hire for your first leadership. Now, granted, this project manager was still kind of part-time in the field, but we made it work because it was just not the owner's strong suit. And then we went and did another kind of weird pivot on a model. And guess what? It worked for him. And now we're on iteration number 3, and we've landed on it, and they're going to do over $1 million. And guess what? The owner still paints 2 or 3 days a week because he cannot, because he has to. It's the most unconventional way we got there. And I don't mean that in a bad way. He would agree with it. We talk about it and love looking back on the last few years about it. But like, again, not the typical model. So I understand there's exceptions out there. You can be creative and you can do it a certain way. But for the most part, we got to make sure that the model you have right now is either going to work in the future and we can get through the short term, or we need to change the model. All right. We have another client right now that has a lot of overhead, 2 owners, 3 people on top of that in the office, going to do about 1.5 million this year. Very overhead heavy. They know it. It's not like a shock, right? They've been profitable this year. Last 6 months has been great. It's been great. We got some concerns heading into wintertime. We're planning through that. But they did it because they've got the right people and they're gearing up for that next run heading into next year, right? So maybe it's the situation that the model you're in, it just doesn't really work right this second, or in their case, we've made it work this year to where it's not hurting them. But it's going to set them up for great success next year because they have all the overhead. They have all the people they need to arguably do 2 to 2.25. Right? So like, yeah, maybe not as financially great here, but going to be really great when they get there. Right? And so understand that if you're in a model that just doesn't work for where you are, if you're doing it to set up for next year or for the next run, and we can embrace or endure some temporary, maybe financial pain, or just not, thriving great. Okay, that's fine, right? It's part of the plan. But what I want you to do when I talk about modeling and I talk about benchmarking is I want you to talk to people to understand what works. Have a coach or a mentor in your life, right? Because there's, once you get north of $1 million, it's kind of the Wild West, right? There's 100 different ways you can grow from there. But like 0 to $1 million, there's a pretty clear-cut way on what works and what doesn't, at least 98% of the time outside of those couple exceptions I mentioned. So my goal for you is this. Become aware of your finances. Forecast out. Look ahead to 2026 and forecast these things out. I've already forecasted November, December. I'm excited that right this second, barring crazy changes, we are on track to hit the financial goals that we've had in place for 6 months of where we wanted to be at the end of the year. Because I've forecasted it out and I see that we're on track and I know that we need to execute and then we need to give ourselves a buffer there. Okay. So become aware, forecast things, and then more importantly, benchmark. Go get out into the painting community. Go to the next PCA event. We got this thing called Expo coming up in February. If you haven't heard of it, it's what I call the Super Bowl of the industry. I heard somebody say that one time. It was the best thing I've ever heard to explain an event like Expo. And the reason why, they said you can try to put it into words, but it's just something you got to show up and experience. They said just like the Super Bowl. You can say it's the coolest football game of the year. It's the most important football game of the year. That doesn't really do it justice unless you show up and experience a Super Bowl. I've never experienced one, but from what I've heard, PCA Expo is our Super Bowl of the year. Come get around this community. We're going to be in Orlando, Florida. We got a great property for it again. We were there a couple years ago, right outside of Disney. It's going to be a ton of fun. We'd love for you to benchmark and collaborate with people, understand what's possible in this industry. And maybe even better than that, not quite. We got our 2026 Elite Business Retreat happening July 22nd, 23rd, 24th, right back here in St. Louis again. We just signed the contract with the venue. Ticket sales are live. We have 70 spots for this event. We will not sell more than that. We might have about 80 people by the time you add speakers, 80 to 85, but we will not sell more than 70 tickets. The room maxes out at 85. We will not sell more than 70 tickets. And so I already know most of the 52 people that came last year want to come again. I can tell you probably 30 to 40 more that were really mad they missed it. And there's a lot of new people we're interacting with and will be interacting with the next 6 months. Please get your spot today. All right. If you want to come, if you want to check out our retreat, go to elitebusinessadvisors.com/retreat. Get your ticket today because it will sell out. I'm on a mission to sell out by April 1. I believe we're going to do it. I think we've built enough momentum. I think we have enough support in this industry to do it. We've got some of the best speakers coming back again. More details will be coming. get involved in the community, benchmark, collaborate. And remember, be aware, forecast ahead, and benchmark. Thanks for plugging into this week's episode. I hope you're able to take a few nuggets away from it to implement into your business. Remember, knowledge without implementation is useless. If you're curious about what we do and how we help painting contractors all over North America, schedule a free business analysis meeting with us at www.elitebusinessadvisors.com. Our entire team of advisors have ran and managed painting companies just like myself and are here to help support you on your journey. We have packages available for contractors at every stage of business, from flying solo and just starting out, all the way to multi-million-dollar businesses. And lastly, if you loved this episode, please leave us a rating and a review. It helps others on the platform find our podcast, and it could be the best blessing that's ever happened to them thanks to you. Thanks for plugging in, and we'll see you back for next week's episode.